Hey guys, so this is section 1.4. This video is just going to talk about part 2 of this section, okay? We talked about part 1 in class the other day. So part 2 focuses on writing equations, and we're going to solve some more word problems that involve linear equations, because we know this section is all about linear functions, okay? So let's get started. I'm going to jump down here to a slide right here. And we want to discuss what we need in order to write linear equations, okay? Every line is unique. It depends on the points that it goes through. So sometimes we'll have lines that have a positive slope or a negative slope, all depends. But the two things we need to write an equation, we need the slope, and I just need 1 point, just 1 point, doesn't matter which one it is. But I need at least 1 point, and I do need the slope. We talked about this slope-intercept form in last class, okay? I want to show you guys point-slope form. Remember, guys, these names go with the form. So slope, because there's the slope in the form in the equation. Intercept, because B is the intercept. So this equation, point, because there's a point in that equation, and slope because there's the slope in the equation, okay? So there's different, they do the same thing, they allow us to write the equations, but sometimes it's better to use one over the other. And a lot of times when we're writing equations, it's really helpful if we use point-slope form. So take a moment, pause this, and write those two equations down in your notes for sure. Okay? So let's use that equation to solve this and write this equation. So example 6 now, it says, find the equation of the line that goes through the point 2, 1 and has a slope of 3. So remember, I needed two things, and guess what? This one is so nice, it gave us both, right? I needed a point, perfect, got a point, and I needed a slope, got the slope, awesome. What we do with these two characteristics of the line is I substitute them right into my point-slope form, okay? Here's my point-slope form, and we are going to take those two characteristics and substitute them right into the equation, okay? My slope we know is 3, so we take that 3 and put it right in for my m. And this point, we know a point is going to be x1, y1, okay? And that's what I'm going to do. We leave the plane y and x. Okay, I leave that y and I leave this x, but I substitute this 2 and the 1 in for x1 and y1. So take a look at what this looks like. Y minus 1, because that's my y1, equals 3, because that's my slope, times x minus my x1 is 2. We are only changing the variables that have m, the x1 and the y1. We leave the other two variables alone. And guys, from here on out, we just solve this and simplify. So I'm going to distribute the 3. It becomes 3x minus 6. And then I'm going to add that 1 to the other side. And I get y equals 3x minus 5. And there's my equation. Why I like to start out the problem in point-slope form is because notice I end up in slope-intercept form. And that's the form we want to end up in. Okay? We want to end up in slope-intercept form. Okay? Awesome job, guys. So now let's take a look at a new example. But notice this time I am given 2 points. Check that out. Find the equation of the line that goes through points negative 3, 2 and 4, negative 3. Well, don't I need a slope and a point, right? So what am I going to do? Oh, I can't do it, right? Is there a way for me to find the slope when I'm given 2 points? Well, of course there is, right? And that's the first thing we need to do in this example. If I'm given 2 points, the first thing we need to do is find the slope. So let's jot down our slope formula. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, right? Remember, we can label, that makes it super helpful. And then we substitute in. My y2 is negative 3, minus my y1 is 2, over my x2 is 4, minus my x1 is negative 3. That's going to become a positive. Negative 3 minus 2 gives me a negative 5 over 7. So there's my slope, okay? Now we kind of just want to treat this like this problem that we just did, right? I pick a point and now I have the slope. So we're going to continue and use that point slope form to write this equation. So let's jot down that point slope form again. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Let's substitute in what we know, right? First, I know my slope, right? My slope is negative 5 over 7, okay? Times x minus my x1 and my y1, right? We can use either point. It doesn't matter, guys, whichever one we want to use. I'm just going to use the first one, but you can use the second one. Doesn't matter. So my x1 is negative 3. This is going to become plus 3. And my y1 is 2. And now we just go ahead and solve this. I'm going to distribute that negative 5 over 7. So I'll leave this side y minus 2 equals distribute here. So I'm going to have negative 5 over 7x. Ooh, you remember how we multiply fractions? Go straight across, right? So I have minus 5 times 3 gives me 15 over 7 times the 1 gives me 7. Remember how to multiply fractions. We go straight across, okay? We'll get that 2 over because I want to get y alone. So I'm now going to have negative 5 over 7x minus 15 over 7. Watch what I'm going to do here, plus the 2. And we want to combine like terms. Oh, we're not ready for this. We want to combine like terms. So, do you remember how to add fractions? Right? We need a common denominator. So I'm going to have y equals negative 5 over 7x minus 15 over 7 plus, I need a common denominator. So this is right now over 1. That's going to become 14 over 7, right? 14 over 7 is the same thing as 2. And now we can combine like terms right here. We can't combine those until I have a common denominator. Remember how we add and subtract fractions. And we will end up with negative 15 over 7 plus 14 over 7. We know when we add and subtract fractions, the denominator stays the same. And I'm just doing the numerator. Negative 15 plus 14 gives me negative 1. And there's my equation. Okay, guys, we have some crucial points in here about fractions. So we want to make sure we remember how to add and subtract fractions because that is a big part of this problem. Okay, great work, guys. Let's talk briefly about word problems and linear applications, linear functions. We are going to do this one together. So it says we need to remember when we are dealing with a word problem that we want to connect it to our math. We need to remember what the x variables represent and the y variables represent. So let's read through this. The cost to make 20 items of a product is $250, and the cost to make 35 items of the same product is $325. If the cost is a linear function, find the cost function c of x. What are we going to do? We always want to focus on what we were given. Well, I'm going to pull out the key information here. I was given 20 items cost $250 to make, and 35 items cost $325 to make. Now, notice those are kind of like my two different variables. I have items being my x values, and money being cost being my y values. So what we want to do is translate that information into a point. Right? Because in order to write a function, a linear function, remember we need points. I need a point and slope. Okay? So luckily, I was able to take the information that we were given, and we want to write it as a point. 20, 250, 35, 325. And now we can start to write our equation and treat it just like the problem we just did. What happens when we were given 2 points? Okay? Well, I know I need the slope, so I'm going to start with the slope. And I'll have m equals, here's my x, so x1, y1, x2, y2. So my y2 is 325, minus my y1 is 250, over my x2 is 35 minus my x1 is 20. We'll simplify this. 325 minus 250 gives me 75 over 15. A little division gives me 5 as my slope. And once again, once I have my slope, I have my 1 point. We're going to go ahead and plug this right into that point slope form. We can copy it down again and substitute in what we know. Okay, so I have y minus, again, remember it doesn't matter which point we use. I'll just use this guy, 35, comma 325. My y1 is 325. My slope is 5, times x minus 35. Okay, we're going to go ahead and distribute. So I'm going to have y minus 325 still equals 5x. 5 times 35 is going to give me minus 175. And we'll move that 325 to the other side to get my y alone, and then we will have our linear equation. Oops. 325. Y equals 5x, negative 175, plus 325 is going to give me a positive 150. And there's my equation. So the key thing here with this word problem, guys, is notice in the word problem, I wasn't given any points, right? I had to take the information and turn it into 2 points because I need those points in order to write the point and the slope so I can put it all together and write the linear equation. Okay? Just takes time. You guys got this. You rock.